shocking. Now, we will clear this one up real quick, but if you didn't see this past week, there has been some fake PS5 announcement emails circulating around the games industry, and a few websites did pick it up as if it was real, but basically it's a very fake invitation, very much so like the one back in 2013 for the PS4 reveal, where it says it's for February 20th at the PlayStation Theater in New York City. Come see the future of PlayStation. That is exactly how it looked back then, and this is the same thing kind of circulating now. So as of right now, it's currently fake. Nothing like that actually going on, so keep in mind no PS5 reveal is imminent. Now, this news story is more of a reminder, but keep in mind for February's PlayStation Plus games, they've recently been announced. These are the last PlayStation 3 and Vita games, so come March, it will be strictly PlayStation 4 content moving forward. And so for February, your last PS3 and Vita games are going to be getting Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, great game, Gunhouse, Rogue Aces, and Dive Kick. And then that's it. Moving on, we'll just get PS4 stuff. So I'll be actually fascinated to see what March will bring. If Sony will actually add more PS4 games, 2 or 3 more titles instead of the typical guaranteed 2 games where we get 3 or 4 games. I'd like to see that. I think that's the right thing to do. But knowing Sony, will probably just keep getting 2 games. And there might be this like little discrepancy period of 1.5 to 2 years up until PS5 releases, because surely PlayStation 5 will launch with PlayStation Plus support, and they will want to make some sort of a big splash when the platform launches, and it'll probably come with 1 or 2 games like right off the bat for new PlayStation 5 owners. But you know, we will probably have that period where it's just PS4 stuff, or maybe Sony will add PlayStation VR to the suite, and so guaranteed PlayStation VR games separate from titles that are specifically just PlayStation 4 with no VR support. That would also be, I think, a very welcome change, but we'll see in March. Now, while we're talking about PlayStation Plus, Sony also recently announced this past week that PS Plus Cloud storage is increased to 100 gigabytes. So before it was 10. So this is a very welcome change. I mean, that's an exponential sort of increase. You would think that they do something like, oh, it's up to 30, up to 40, and that would have been fine. I think that would have been serviceable, but certainly 10 was kind of pushing it. Game saves are getting larger and larger, so 100 is great, and I really hope that's not the goodwill they're trying to impart to people for removing PS3 and Vita games from the Instant Game Collection. Just kind of like, oh, well, okay, well, those games are gone, but here's more cloud storage and not more PS4 games. I'm hoping that's not the case, but either way, that's still fine, right? 100 gigabytes, that's great. And Sony said that you can expect this in early February, so we are in that now. I would say you'd have to wait maybe a week or so for that to actually kick in. So, apparently if you were to pull trophy data from the My PS4 Life website, you can find that Drive Club actually has more, in theory, users than Gran Turismo Sport, and it's the most played racing game on the PlayStation 4 with 10 million users, as opposed to the 6.6 million users for Gran Turismo Sport. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear, this is not in any way, shape, or form, I think, totally accurate, given that this is trophy data. So, and Drive Club was available as a PlayStation Plus game at one point, so it had a free barrier of entry for a lot of users to just maybe sign into the game, try it, and then leave, and they weren't actually perhaps technically really committed to the game or whatever. And I feel like it's more anecdotal than anything, but to me, Gran Turismo players are very committed to that franchise and to that game. So if anything, even if it was more of a situation where GT Sport was more played than Drive Club, the numbers for Drive Club, I think, are still pretty impressive, given that the game came out at a pretty harsh launch. And it's interesting because the Drive Club story is that launch was so bad, right? But over time and over months, Evolution actually really dramatically improved that game and added a lot of new features, added some great patches and tracks and cars and things like that. That weather update was a very big one that really excited a lot of people and put people onto that game. And apparently the game is still very well liked today and has a very close following and a tight-knit community. And I guess it's more of a tragic news story, because it's funny to see this game come out, have such a bad rap, but then slowly evolve and improve. Now, Evolution's gone, of course, and so Sony isn't really managing the game to the best of what the game, I think, totally deserves, and we'll never, of course, get a sequel to that game. And there was also that bit of disparity by the fact that, well, we do have Gran Turismo, right? So it's somewhat of a conflict of interest to have both of these games live on PlayStation 4, and to have these two franchises, I guess, consistently see sequels over the years of PlayStation. So I think it was more of an easy decision for Sony to say, well, we don't need Drive Club anymore, especially given what kind of happened with the whole Drive Club fiasco and Evolution dropping the ball initially. So it's still kind of crazy to see that many people have, at the very least, tried Drive Club. And it also kind of shows the power of a free-to-play game at any point in its life, where if it's kind of really doing bad, I mean, give it away at some point and let people get in, you know, and you worry about how to monetize it later. And just get people excited about the product and realize that it actually is much better than you thought it was. Which I think segues us nicely into this Game Informer article, which gives us a little sneak peek into the creations in Dreams. So Media Molecule this past week also lifted up the NDA for Dreams, so now people that are creating in the beta can finally share their creations. I don't know what the point of that NDA was to begin with. What did it do? It was only there for a few weeks, and now people can show off their creations, and my god, it's impressing me even more than that footage I showed you last week. So some of the screenshots, and I'll link you to the Game Informer article so you can go take a look at it, but these screenshots are crazy to me. I mean, look at you can get like photorealism out of this game. I mean, it's unbelievable. I honestly, I'm at a loss for words as to how impressed I am. Now you're seeing like a very cool first-person shooter-y type game with these giant hands out in the distance. It's almost making me think that you can get a team of 15 to 20 people and no lie, no bullshit, from the ground up make a quite significant game. I mean, the thing is, we don't understand the limitations of it yet. And if anybody's in the beta, I would love for you to tell me or reach out to me. But what are your there's got to be limitations. There's got to be a glass ceiling of what you can do. Just like when you're creating a Little Big Planet and there's that thermometer on the side, and you start to realize as you add more objects and more complexity, it locks you off. And, you know, back in Little Big Planet, you could actually drive that up pretty quickly, which was, you know, unfortunate. So I really want to see, where does it end? Because as it looks right now, I'm thoroughly impressed, and I'm starting to believe more and more in this game, even from a commercial standpoint. Because the thing you have to keep in mind with something like this is that a game like this could spread like wildfire when it comes to social media, in Facebook, word of mouth, things like that. I mean, that kind of stuff really takes a game much further than you think nowadays. And so a game that you think would be a failure right away, it has a chance. It has a chance. And that's why I think Media Molecule needs to really highlight some of the creations being made in this game. It's looking great so far. All right, here's your PlayStation 5 rumor for the week, but apparently this is not necessarily a rumor, and more so just insider information that appears to be quite genuine. So industry insider and analyst Daniel Ahmed was on Reset Era forums, gave us a number of things about the PlayStation 5 and what's going on right now, at least in terms of dev kits. He more or less says it's still a bit too early to talk about, but I'll just share these quotes with you. These are a bunch of separated posts, but basically all lumped together. He said, PS5 dev kits are out there, and I've heard positive things about it, but I wouldn't expect any information in the immediate future. 2019 will be another solid year for the platform due to the larger install base, growing network sales, strong third-party software, first-party software, and back catalog. Lineup for the first half of the year is set, but the second half is still in flux. Sony also has a couple of unannounced games, already existing IP, with PS4 in mind, but I'm conscious that there has been discussions about making them cross-gen or next-gen titles. In general, most of the focus for Sony 1P is on PS5 right now. It is still early to talk about next-gen, but I imagine we'll hear some whispers come out of GDC. Now, there's a lot in there that we can dissect. Number one, we know PS5 dev kits are out there. They've been out there actually for a while, and that's at least in terms of rumors. Rumors, of course, never are concrete information, but you know, this happens every single console generation, every 5 to 10 years, when this sort of stuff begins. I mean, when you hear the first few rumors of dev kits being out there, there's a reason why those rumors have circulated. One or two major developers, a few developers, a handful of people probably have dev kits. That's not out of the norm. What fascinates me is that he's saying most of Sony's first parties already moved over to PS5, or is at least shifting their focus to PS5. Makes sense, but if you remember, we did a video not long ago kind of looking at Sony's current lineup of first-party studios, and a lot of them actually still are working on major PlayStation 4 content. And that's kind of what he's also getting at in the beginning of that post, which is that while there is still a lot of big PS4 stuff coming, and sure, that makes sense, we do still have a lot of PS4 content to expect, but this almost to me sort of implies that at each Sony developer, whether they're working on a PS4 project or not, might have a small team starting the pre-production of the very early stages of a PlayStation 5 project. For example, Naughty Dog. We know they're doing The Last of Us Part 2, but we did have a rumor a few months back now, maybe 2.5 months now, where they were doing a casting call for a very fit, large male, and kind of looking like somebody. They were looking for somebody with a similar build of a particular actor on The Walking Dead, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember this exactly, but that, of course, very much so sounds like a project that's not The Last of Us Part 2, because it did entail that it was a new project, a new sort of a collaborative experience at Naughty Dog. Could that be their very early stages of a PS5 project? I don't know. But Sony Santa Monica, they're starting a PS5 project. Guerrilla Games, they're not going to release another PS4 game. The other thing in there is already existing PlayStation IP. That interests me greatly. What could we expect there? Who knows? There's a lot of PlayStation IP out there, so it's very tough to make one or two sort of guesses. But at the very least, my sort of initial gut reaction was, okay, if they're still considering these titles for PS4, they've got to be somewhat smaller scale in terms of budget, in terms of scope, in terms of release. Maybe they could be a PSN game, $20, $30 budget release, maybe a PlayStation VR sort of spin-off like we're seeing with the Hot Shots Golf VR, which is coming this year. You know, that's an existing PlayStation IP. It's probably going to be a smaller scale game, or maybe it'll release at $40, I don't know. But that's maybe what I'm thinking. I wouldn't expect anything substantial or serious. But one thing is for certain, yes, we're moving towards PlayStation 5, and Sony's developers are very much so on it as well. The other thing I'm noticing is that he's saying, well, it's still too early. And I'm not going to lie, a small part of me, and I hate backtracking and changing my opinion, but a small part of me is really starting to think, maybe we won't get that PS5 reveal this year. Maybe we will get it more towards January, February in 2020. I mean, of course, that's very close to 2019, and my line of thinking was, well, we'd see a reveal at some point in the later half of 2019 with a semi-bigger reveal at PlayStation Experience 2019, assuming that Sony holds one. So I'm not going to lie, I'm really getting towards more of a 50-50 in terms of if we will or we won't see it this year. I mean, PS4 is still doing so well. So it's just not stopping, and that's on top of all these big blockbuster games that we still don't have. And like Daniel Ahmed said, GDC, that's going to be a place I think where we'll get a lot of discussion coming out of it. Definitely, we'll see a few rumors, a few things come out of that I think, and it could be just a slip of the tongue for some of these people that will be attending the event and doing interviews or behind closed door discussions, things like that. So that'll be interesting, and that's in March. Now, speaking of GDC, that segues us nicely into our next news story about a lot of statistics about some of the attendees that are going to be at GDC. 4,000 developers were recently surveyed about next-gen consoles and how they feel about next-gen and next-gen technology, and 18% said that they are currently working on next-gen platforms. Now, you may think that's low, however, it's 4,000 people that are being surveyed, and a lot of people going to GDC are not big publishers and developers, and the only real people that are going to have PS5 dev kits right now are big publishers and developers. So that 18% actually seems somewhat within the realm of what we could sort of expect right now if we were to see a survey like this, which we did. And 2% of the respondents say that they're only developing on next-gen platforms, while the 16% of that 18% said that they're working on both current and next-gen platforms. Now, oddly enough, 37% of the respondents said that they're not sure at this time, whereas 47% of the respondents said that they're only making for current-gen platforms. And that's where you see the bulk of that, those 4,000 people against smaller-time developers, indie developers. There's people of all walks of life attending GDC. So yeah, and it's not a bad thing, certainly. I mean, you've got huge install bases between not only just PC as an open platform, but PS4 and Xbox One and Nintendo Switch. Now, just for some more data out of that, 66% of the respondents said that they're currently developing only on PC. Again, there's your bulk people, some of those smaller studios, 38% for smartphones. Again, smaller studios looking for that big buck. Smartphones a very lucrative market, but it's lucrative for the 1% that rise to the top of those online app stores. And then we've got 31% of respondents for PS4, Xbox One. It's a nice, healthy number there. 18% for Nintendo Switch. You may think that's small. I think that is a bit small as well. And 17% for virtual reality platforms, which, again, if anything, I think that's actually a lot for virtual reality, but that's just me. What's surprising, actually, if you break down the VR numbers, 33% are developing VR games for the Vive, 30% for Oculus Rift, and only 13% for PlayStation VR. That is perhaps the most polarizing thing out of this survey, if only because PlayStation VR has market leadership.